Dr. David Cooper stood at the observation deck of the UES Schrödinger, watching the stars blur past the quantum-reinforced windows. His life's work floated around him in the form of humanity's first quantum warship. The massive vessel hummed with energy as its quantum core maintained the ship's state of superposition, existing partially in multiple realities at once. "Dr. Cooper, we're picking up something unusual," said Lieutenant Mary Wilson from her station. Her fingers danced across the holographic controls as she brought up the sensor readings. "It's like nothing we've ever seen before." David walked over to her station, his worn boots clicking against the metal floor. The sensor readings showed massive energy signatures that seemed to bend the very fabric of space-time. As he studied the readings, the ship's alert system suddenly blared to life. "All hands to battle stations." Captain Frank Roberts' voice boomed through the speakers. "We have multiple unknown contacts approaching." The bridge crew rushed to their positions as David made his way to the quantum control center. Through the main viewport, space itself appeared to tear open. Massive beings of pure energy emerged, their forms shifting and changing like living constellations. "By all that's holy," someone whispered. The beings were enormous, each one larger than Earth's moon. They radiated power that made the ship's sensors scream in protest. These were the Celestials, the ancient cosmic entities that humanity had only theorized about until now. A voice echoed through every crew member's mind, ancient and powerful. "What is this abomination? This violation of reality's laws?" Captain Roberts stood from his chair. "This is the UES Schrödinger of the United Earth Fleet. We come in peace." Peace. The mental voice carried traces of horror and disgust. "Your vessel. It exists and doesn't exist. It is here and there. Now and then. This should not be possible." David stepped forward. "We've learned to harness quantum mechanics at a macroscopic scale. Our ship can maintain controlled quantum states that—" Silence. The mental command made several crew members wince. "You primitive beings dare to twist reality itself. Your species has barely learned to lead your planet." The Celestials moved closer, their energy forms rippling with what seemed like agitation. The ship's quantum core hummed louder, automatically responding to the potential threat by increasing the uncertainty of their position in spacetime. "Captain," David said urgently, "they're trying to pin down our quantum state. They're attempting to force us into a single reality." Captain Roberts' face hardened. "Activate the quantum defense grid. Lieutenant Wilson, ready the probability cannons." The Celestials' next words carried clear revulsion. "Your technology is an affront to the natural order. You create ships that exist as waves of probability, weapons that harness uncertainty itself. This cannot be allowed to continue." "With all due respect," Captain Roberts replied, "we have every right to develop our technology as we see fit. We're not looking for a fight." "You understand nothing, little beings," the Celestials communicated. "Your quantum abominations threaten the very fabric of existence. They must be unmade." The closest Celestial being reached out with tendrils of pure energy, attempting to grasp the ship. But the UES Schrödinger's quantum nature made it impossible to pin down. The ship existed in multiple states simultaneously, causing the energy tendrils to pass through empty space. "Fascinating," David muttered, checking his readings. "They can't properly interact with us while we're in a superposition state. Their mastery over conventional spacetime means nothing against quantum uncertainty." The Celestials' frustration radiated across space. "This defies all natural law. A vessel cannot exist in multiple states. Reality itself rejects such things." Captain Roberts smiled grimly. "Reality seems to disagree with you, Dr. Cooper. Show them what our quantum drive can really do." David nodded and initiated the quantum jump sequence. The UES Schrödinger's existence became even more uncertain, spreading across multiple points in spacetime simultaneously. To the Celestials' horror, the ship seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. "Remember this moment," Captain Roberts transmitted to the Celestials. Humanity isn't bound by your understanding of reality's laws. We make our own path. The ship's quantum state fluctuated one final time before it disappeared completely, leaving the Celestials in a state of shocked silence. Their first contact with humanity had shown them something they never expected: a species that could turn their greatest weakness, their limited understanding of quantum mechanics, into their greatest strength. As the UES Schrödinger reappeared light years away, David knew that this was just the beginning. The gods of space had trembled at humanity's quantum ships, and the universe would never be the same. Captain Rachel Martinez watched her tactical display as 3 celestial scout ships approached the UES Schrödinger. After the first contact incident 2 weeks ago, the cosmic beings had been following human ships at a distance, studying them. Today, they seemed more bold. "Status of the quantum core?" she asked, keeping her voice steady despite the tension on the bridge. "Operating at peak efficiency, Captain," the ship's engineer reported. "We can shift states at a moment's notice." Rachel nodded, her dark hair neatly tied back as she studied the massive energy beings. Each scout was smaller than the Celestials they'd met before, but still larger than her ship. They moved through space like living stars, trailing cosmic energy behind them. "They're scanning us," said Lieutenant Paul Baker from the sensor station. "Their energy readings are off the charts." The ship's communication system crackled with the now familiar mental voice of the Celestials. "Human vessel, power down your reality-defying engines and prepare for inspection." Rachel smiled slightly. "I don't think so." She turned to her crew. "Activate quantum defense protocols. Let's show them why they shouldn't corner a ship that doesn't play by their rules." The UES Schrödinger's quantum core hummed louder as it pushed the ship into a state of superposition. To the Celestial Scouts, the human vessel seemed to blur, existing in multiple places at once. "This is your final warning," the celestial voice boomed in their minds. "Your quantum technology is an offense to proper existence." "Proper existence," Rachel replied. "There's nothing improper about understanding the true nature of reality." "Lieutenant Baker, prepare probability torpedoes." The Celestial Scouts moved to surround the ship, their energy forms pulsing with power. They reached out with beams of pure force, trying to lock the human vessel in place. But the Schrödinger simply shifted between states, impossible to pin down. "Fascinating," said Dr. Amy Foster, their quantum physicist. "They're trying to force us into a single reality state, but they don't understand that uncertainty is our strength, not our weakness." The first scout ship launched an attack, sending a wave of cosmic energy toward the Schrödinger. But the human ship existed in too many possible locations for the attack to connect. The energy wave passed through empty space. "Our turn," Rachel said calmly. "Fire probability torpedoes, spread pattern alpha." The weapons launched from the Schrödinger, each one existing in a quantum state that made them impossible to track or dodge. The Celestial Scouts tried to move away, but the torpedoes struck true, their quantum warheads disrupting the being's energy patterns. "Impossible," the mental voice screamed. "How can you hit us when your weapons don't exist in a fixed state?" Rachel leaned forward in her chair. "Because we don't need to know exactly where our torpedoes are to know they'll find their target. That's the beauty of quantum uncertainty." The Scouts regrouped, their energy patterns showing signs of damage. They had never faced weapons that could actually hurt them before. The human ship's quantum nature made it a threat they couldn't easily counter. "Dr. Foster," Rachel called out, "let's show them our new trick. Initiate quantum phasing." The scientist's fingers flew over her console. "Quantum phase drive engaging, Captain. Breaking down our wave function now." The UES Schrödinger seemed to fade from existence, its quantum state spreading so thin across reality that it became almost invisible. The Celestial Scouts' scanning beams passed right through the space where the ship should have been. "Where are they?" the Celestials demanded, their mental voice tinged with fear. "How can they simply cease to exist?" Rachel's voice came back to them from everywhere and nowhere. "We haven't ceased to exist. We've simply embraced the true nature of reality. At the quantum level, nothing is certain. Nothing is fixed. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you'll understand why your traditional powers don't work against us. The Schrödinger reappeared behind the scout ships, its quantum state condensing back into a more visible form. The Celestials turned, but too late. Another spread of probability torpedoes struck them, sending them reeling through space. "Return to your leaders," Rachel transmitted. "Tell them that humanity's quantum ships aren't abominations. We're the next step in the evolution of space travel, and if they can't accept that, they should stay out of our way." The scouts retreated, their energy forms flickering with damage and fear. As they disappeared into the darkness of space, Rachel turned to her crew. "Send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them the quantum drive exceeded all combat expectations, and add a personal note. The gods aren't ready for what humanity has become." Admiral Robert Hayes stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Einstein, watching the swirling colors of the Orion Nebula through the main viewport. Behind him, 40 quantum warships waited in formation, each one existing in a state of quantum uncertainty. The sight would have given anyone a headache, ships flickering in and out of existence, being in multiple places at once. "Status report," he called out, adjusting his uniform collar. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said Commander Betty White. "Quantum cores are synchronized and operating at full power. The Celestials are approaching from 3 vectors." Robert nodded, his gray eyes fixed on the tactical display. The enemy was coming in force this time, not just scouts, but a full battle fleet of cosmic entities. Each one blazed like a small sun, their energy forms stretching for thousands of miles. "They've learned from their previous encounters," he said. "They're trying to box us in. Lieutenant Chris Anderson, open a channel to all ships." The young communications officer complied quickly. Robert addressed his fleet, his voice firm and clear. "This is Admiral Hayes. Today we prove that humanity's quantum fleet isn't just a scientific marvel. It's the future of warfare itself. Initiate quantum fleet consciousness." Across all 40 ships, quantum engineers activated their newest technology. The ship's quantum states began to entangle, linking them together in ways that defied traditional physics. What affected one ship would instantly affect them all, allowing for perfect coordination. The Celestials' collective voice boomed across space. "Your fleet is an insult to the natural order. Today we end this quantum plague." Robert allowed himself a small smile. "Begin the battle dance. Pattern Omega." The human fleet moved as one, their quantum states flowing together like a wave of probability through space. The Celestials launched their attack, massive beams of cosmic energy cutting through the void. But they couldn't hit what didn't exist in any single place or time. "Sir," Betty called out, "the Celestials are trying to collapse our quantum field." "Let them try," Robert replied calmly. "Activate the uncertainty drives. Full power." The quantum fleet's existence became even more uncertain, spreading across space like a fog of possibility. The Celestials' attacks passed through empty space as the human ships existed everywhere and nowhere at once. "This defies all logic." The Celestials' voice raged in their minds. "A fleet cannot act as a single quantum system." "Your logic is outdated," Robert transmitted back. "Lieutenant Anderson, signal all ships to prepare probability cannons." The fleet's weapons charged up, each one synchronized with the others through quantum entanglement. When they fired, it wasn't 40 separate attacks. It was a single massive wave of quantum energy, impossible to predict or avoid. The celestial fleet scattered as the probability wave washed over them. Several of their energy forms flickered and dimmed, damaged by weapons that shouldn't have been able to hurt them. "Admiral," Betty reported, "they're changing tactics. They're trying to observe all possible locations simultaneously." Robert had expected this. "Initiate Protocol Schrödinger. All ships, collapse your wave functions on my mark." The human fleet's quantum state grew even more complex. Each ship now existed in thousands of possible locations, their probability waves overlapping and interfering with each other. The Celestials' attempts to observe them only made their positions more uncertain. "Now," Robert commanded. In perfect synchronization, all 40 ships collapsed their quantum states into single points, but not where the Celestials were watching. The entire fleet reappeared in the enemy's blind spot, their weapons already firing. The Celestials' mental voice carried clear shock. "How? Even when we observe every point in space, you still surprise us." "Because you still think in terms of classical physics," Robert replied. "You try to pin us down, to force us to exist in ways you understand. But we've moved beyond that. Our fleet doesn't just use quantum mechanics. We are quantum mechanics." The cosmic entities began to retreat, their once proud battle formation broken. Several of their number had been severely damaged by the quantum weapons, their energy forms flickering like dying stars. As the enemy fled, Robert turned to his crew. "Send word to Earth. Tell them the quantum fleet consciousness worked better than we hoped. The gods of space just learned that humanity's grasp of quantum physics isn't just a trick. It's an entirely new way of existing." He watched the retreating Celestials through the viewport, their light dimming against the backdrop of the Orion Nebula. "They thought they were the masters of reality," he said quietly. "Now they're learning that reality itself is stranger than they ever imagined." Dr. Linda Parker stared at the holographic display in her lab aboard the UES Hawking. Streams of data flowed around her, showing the quantum states of over 100 ships spread across 3 star systems. Her latest project was about to change space warfare forever. "Dr. Parker," the ship's AI announced, "Fleet Command is requesting an update on the entanglement system." Linda brushed her short blonde hair from her eyes and adjusted her lab coat. "Tell them we're ready. The quantum network can now link ships across any distance instantly." She had spent months developing this system. Traditional quantum entanglement was tricky enough with tiny particles. Making it work with massive warships had seemed impossible, until now. Captain Steve Wilson's voice came through her comm system. "Dr. Parker, we've got incoming." A celestial battle group just appeared in all 3 systems simultaneously. "Perfect timing," Linda said, allowing herself a small smile. "They're about to see what true entanglement can do." She rushed to the bridge, her tablet displaying real-time quantum data. The main screen showed celestial energy beings appearing in massive numbers, their forms twisted with rage and determination. "Their attack pattern suggests they think we're divided," Steve said, studying the tactical display. "They don't know about the entanglement system yet." Linda nodded. "All ships are quantum-linked and ready. When one moves, they all move. When one fires, they all fire. Distance means nothing to entangled systems." The Celestial's voice echoed through space. "Your forces are scattered, humans. Today your quantum aberrations end. Should we tell them?" Steve asked with a grin. "Let's show them instead," Linda replied. She opened a channel to all human ships across the 3 systems. "This is Dr. Parker. Activate quantum entanglement nets. Now." 100 human warships, separated by light years of space, suddenly began moving in perfect unison. Their quantum states merged across the vast distances, making them act as a single entity. When a ship in the Orion system turned, ships in Carina and Vela turned at exactly the same moment. "Impossible," the celestial voice boomed. "Ships cannot coordinate across light years instantly." "Actually," Linda transmitted back, "quantum entanglement doesn't care about distance. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. We just made it work on a bigger scale." The celestial forces tried to adapt, but they couldn't handle fighting what was essentially the same battle in 3 places at once. When they adjusted their tactics in one system, they found the human ships in all systems responding instantly to counter them. "Fire quantum torpedoes," Steve ordered. "Full spread." Hundreds of quantum weapons launched simultaneously across 3 star systems. The torpedoes themselves were entangled, making their paths impossible to predict. The Celestials couldn't dodge attacks that existed in a quantum state across multiple points in space. Their energy patterns are weakening, Linda reported, watching her quantum readings. They can't maintain their form against weapons that ignore traditional spacetime. The Celestials tried one last desperate tactic. In all three systems, they attempted to create a reality lock, a field that would force everything inside to follow classical physics. Linda laughed. They still don't understand. Lieutenant Jane Foster, activate the quantum wave collapse. The human fleet's quantum state suddenly shifted. Rather than fighting the Celestials' reality lock, they used it. 100 ships collapsed their wave functions simultaneously, choosing their positions with perfect coordination through the entanglement network. The celestial forces found themselves surrounded in all three systems, caught in their own trap. Your ships, the cosmic beings transmitted, their mental voice shaking. They act as one across the galaxy. How can you control such power? We don't control it, Linda replied. We work with it. Quantum mechanics isn't just a tool for us anymore. It's how we think, how we fight, how we exist. The Celestials retreated, their energy forms dimmed and damaged. As they fled, Linda turned to Captain Wilson. Send word to Fleet Command. The entanglement system works perfectly. We can now coordinate our entire fleet instantly across any distance. Steve nodded, looking at the tactical display showing their victory in three systems simultaneously. The gods of space just learned that distance means nothing to humanity's quantum fleet. What's next, Dr. Parker? Linda smiled, already thinking of new possibilities. Now we work on quantum teleportation. Imagine a fleet that doesn't just communicate instantly across space, but can move across it instantly too. The stars seemed to shine brighter as she spoke, as if the universe itself was acknowledging humanity's growing mastery over its deepest laws. Commander John Miller watched as thousands of celestial observation probes surrounded his ship, the UES Feynman. The cosmic beings had finally figured out what they thought was a winning strategy. If they observed the human ships constantly, they could force them to stay in one place and one reality. They really don't give up, do they? John said, running a hand through his short brown hair. Status of the quantum core. Under observation from all directions, Commander, reported Chief Engineer Anna Woods. The Celestials are trying to collapse our quantum state through continuous monitoring. The massive energy probes circled like hungry wolves, each one focused intently on the human vessel. Their combined observation was meant to force the ship to exist in a single fixed point in spacetime. They think they've got us figured out, John said with a smile. Time to show them why that's a mistake. Begin Operation Wave Collapse. The Celestial's voice echoed through their minds. Your quantum tricks end now. Humans, you cannot exist in multiple states while under observation. This is a fundamental law of quantum mechanics. You're right, John transmitted back. But you forgot something important. The observer effect works both ways. He nodded to Anna, who began the sequence they had planned. The UES Feynman's quantum core started to pulse in a new pattern. Instead of fighting against the observation, it embraced it. All hands, John announced. Prepare for quantum feedback loop. The ship's systems began to use the Celestials' own observation as a weapon. Each probe trying to pin down their location became part of their quantum system. The more the probes watched, the more they became entangled with what they were watching. Sir, called out Lieutenant Ben Carter from the sensors. The probes, they're beginning to lose their fixed positions. John watched as the celestial devices started to show signs of quantum uncertainty. By observing the human ship's quantum state so closely, they had become part of that state themselves. Basic quantum mechanics, John explained to his crew. You can't observe a quantum system without becoming part of it. Lieutenant Sarah Wells, fire up the probability cannons. The weapons came online, but they weren't aimed at the probes. Instead, they fired beams of pure quantum uncertainty into space. The celestial observers, already linked to the ship's quantum state, began to blur and shift. "What are you doing to us?" The celestial voice demanded, showing fear for the first time. "Our probes, they're losing their grip on reality." "Welcome to the quantum realm," John replied calmly. "You wanted to observe us so badly. Now you're part of the experiment." The probes tried to pull back, but it was too late. Their intense observation of the human ship had entangled them with its quantum state. As the UES Feynman shifted through multiple realities, the probes were forced to do the same. "Impossible," the Celestials cried out. "Our observers are becoming the observed." John turned to his tactical officer. "Show them what that means, Lieutenant Wells." Full quantum cascade. The ship's systems pulsed again, this time pushing their quantum uncertainty out through the entangled probes. The effect spread like a wave, causing each probe to exist in multiple states at once. The celestial devices began to malfunction. They had been designed to observe and measure, to force things into fixed states. Now they themselves were becoming uncertain, existing as probability waves rather than fixed points in space. "Your own tools betray you," John transmitted to the increasingly panicked Celestials. "The more you try to pin us down, the more you become like us." The probes started to vanish, their energy patterns disrupted by quantum uncertainty. The Celestials had no choice but to withdraw them or risk losing them completely to the quantum realm. As the last probe disappeared, John turned to his crew. "Send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them Operation Wave Collapse was a complete success. The Celestials just learned that trying to observe quantum ships too closely makes the observers become quantum too." Anna looked up from her station. "Commander, the quantum core is stable and ready for normal operations. But sir, I think we just changed the rules of space combat forever." John nodded, watching the last traces of the celestial probes fade away. "That's what they get for forgetting the first rule of quantum mechanics. The observer affects the observed. And sometimes, the observed affects the observer right back." The stars seemed to twinkle differently now, as if acknowledging that humanity had just turned one of the universe's fundamental laws into a weapon. Dr. Susan Wright stood before the assembled fleet admirals in the quantum strategy room aboard Earth's orbital command station. The holographic display behind her showed the positions of every human quantum ship in the galaxy. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her confident voice carrying across the room, "today we make our entire fleet disappear." Admiral Bob Carter raised an eyebrow. "Disappear, Dr. Wright. We can already make ships hard to detect." Susan shook her head, her red hair catching the light. "Not hide, Admiral. I mean exist in a state of pure quantum uncertainty, like Schrödinger's cat. Alive and dead at once, our fleet will be everywhere and nowhere." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Susan pulled up her quantum equations on the main display. She had spent months developing this strategy, pushing the boundaries of what they thought possible. "Fleet Command, this is the UES War," a voice crackled through the comm. "Celestial forces are massing in 7 systems. Largest gathering we've seen yet." "Perfect timing," Susan said. "They're about to learn what true quantum warfare means. Admiral Carter, shall we begin?" The Admiral nodded. "Send the order to all ships. Operation Quantum Ghost is now active." Susan moved to the Quantum Control Center, her fingers dancing across the controls. "All ships, initiate superposition protocols on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." Across the galaxy, every human quantum ship began to change. Their quantum cores pulsed in perfect synchronization, guided by Susan's calculations. The ships didn't just become uncertain in their positions, they became uncertain in their very existence. "By the stars," whispered Admiral Carter, watching the tactical display. "The whole fleet. It's everywhere and nowhere," Susan finished. "Each ship exists as a probability wave spread across thousands of light years. The Celestials can't fight what they can't find." The Celestial's voice boomed through space, reaching every human station and ship. What sorcery is this? An entire fleet cannot simply cease to exist. Watch us, Susan transmitted back. Lieutenant Dan Foster, show them what a fleet of quantum ghosts can do. The human ships, now existing as pure probability waves, began to move. They passed through solid matter like it wasn't there. They appeared and disappeared faster than light itself. Every time the Celestials tried to attack, they found themselves striking empty space. This is beyond abomination. The Celestials rage. You have turned your entire fleet into a quantum nightmare. Susan smiled. Nightmare? We prefer to think of it as evolution. All ships begin quantum strike pattern delta. The fleet responded, their weapons firing from 1,000 possible positions at once. The quantum torpedoes existed in the same uncertain state as the ships that launched them. The Celestials found themselves under attack from weapons that existed everywhere and nowhere, fired by ships that might or might not be there. Their energy patterns are failing, reported one of the sensor officers. They can't defend against attacks that don't exist in normal spacetime. The Celestial forces tried to retreat, but found quantum torpedoes waiting at every possible escape route. Their mighty fleet, which had thought to crush humanity once and for all, was being torn apart by weapons they couldn't see or predict. Dr. Wright, Admiral Carter said, "You've turned our fleet into something that breaks every law of physics they understand." Susan shook her head. Not breaks, Admiral. We're just using the laws as they truly are. Reality itself is uncertain at its most basic level. We've just scaled that uncertainty up. The battle, if it could even be called that, ended quickly. The Celestial fleet retreated in disarray, their energy forms dimmed and damaged by weapons that should not have been able to exist. Send word to all commands, Admiral Carter ordered. Operation Quantum Ghost is a complete success. From now on, our fleet doesn't just use quantum mechanics, it exists as quantum mechanics. Susan watched the probability waves of their ships rippling across space on the tactical display. The Celestials thought they were gods, she said quietly. But they never truly understood the universe they claimed to rule. They saw quantum uncertainty as a weakness to be controlled. We saw it as an opportunity to become something new. In the vast darkness of space, humanity's quantum fleet continued to exist in its impossible state, a testament to how far they had come from their first stumbling steps into space. The gods of the cosmos had finally met their match, in ships that were everywhere and nowhere, in weapons that existed and didn't exist, in a species that had mastered the very fabric of reality itself. Dr. David Cooper and Captain Rachel Martinez stood side by side on the bridge of the USS Einstein, watching as the largest celestial fleet ever seen gathered before them. The cosmic beings had marshaled their full might for one final attempt to stop humanity's quantum expansion. "They're afraid," Rachel said softly, her experienced eyes scanning the tactical display. "Look how their energy patterns fluctuate." David nodded. "They should be. Today we show them the true power of quantum mechanics." The combined human quantum fleet waited in formation, over 1,000 ships existing in various states of uncertainty. Each vessel was a testament to how far they'd come since that first contact with the Celestials. "All ships report ready," Lieutenant Jack Wilson announced from his station. "Quantum cores are synchronized." The Celestial's voice thundered through space, stronger than ever before. "This ends today, humans. Your quantum abominations have spread far enough. Reality itself demands your ships be unmade." Rachel exchanged a look with David. "Shall we show them our final evolution?" "All ships," David broadcast, "initiate total quantum transformation. Execute Protocol Universe Dance." The human fleet began to change. Not just their positions or states became uncertain, but their very nature. The ships started to exist as pure quantum probability, their matter and energy becoming one with the quantum foam of space itself. "What are you becoming?" the celestial voice asked, showing fear for the first time. "We're becoming what we were always meant to be," Rachel transmitted back. Dr. Cooper, activate the quantum reality drive. David's fingers flew across his console as he initiated the sequence they'd spent months preparing. The entire human fleet began to pulse with energy that defied classification. They weren't just ships anymore. They were living quantum equations, existing in perfect harmony with the universe's deepest laws. The Celestials launched their attack, countless beams of cosmic energy cutting through space. But the human fleet simply phased through other levels of reality, letting the attacks pass harmlessly through space where they might or might not have been. Their weapons can't touch us anymore, David reported. We exist in too many states at once. Lieutenant Emma Lee, prepare the quantum reality cannons. The new weapons powered up across the fleet. They didn't fire energy or matter. They fired pure quantum probability, weapons that could rewrite the local laws of physics themselves. This is impossible. The Celestials rage. You cannot change reality itself. Reality was never what you thought it was, Rachel replied calmly. Fire. The quantum reality cannons activated. Waves of probability crashed through space, turning the battlefield into a sea of quantum uncertainty. The celestial fleet found their energy forms beginning to fluctuate as local space-time became more quantum than normal. You see, David transmitted to their enemies, we didn't break the universe's laws. We embraced them completely. Reality itself is quantum at its heart. We just helped it remember that fact. The celestial forces began to fade, their perfect energy forms unable to maintain coherence in space that had become purely quantum. They had always existed by imposing order on reality. Now that reality had become uncertainty itself, they had no power. What have you done? They cried out. What have you become? Rachel stood tall on her bridge. We've become what you feared most. Beings who understand that uncertainty isn't a flaw in reality, but its greatest strength. The celestial fleet retreated, their mighty forms dimmed and weakened. They had come expecting to fight ships, even quantum ships. Instead, they had faced something that had transcended traditional existence itself. As the cosmic beings vanished into the darkness of space, David turned to Rachel. Send word to Earth. Tell them the quantum revolution is complete. We're not just masters of quantum mechanics anymore. We are quantum mechanics. Rachel nodded, watching the stars twinkle through the quantum foam their fleet had become. They thought they were gods because they could manipulate reality, she said, but we became something more. We became one with reality itself. The human quantum fleet hung in space, their forms shifting between states of existence, their very presence making the universe remember its true quantum nature. They had started with one ship that could exist in multiple states. Now they had become something that even gods feared, a species that had embraced uncertainty itself as their greatest weapon. In the vast darkness between the stars, humanity's quantum ships continued their dance of probability and possibility. The cosmic gods no longer dared to challenge them, for how could you fight an enemy that had become one with the quantum nature of reality itself? The universe, it seemed, had new masters now. Not gods who imposed order, but humans who danced with uncertainty itself.